Hello everybody and welcome to our presentation on Stop Stress, Achieve Success. I'm Karen, the social media specialist here at schoolfinder.com, and very exciting webinar session that we have planned for you today. We have a guest speaker. Her name is Sandie Matheson, and she is presenting all the way from Saskatoon.
Hello from a very chilly Saskatoon. I hope you're all well today, and thank you for joining the webinar. Today we're focusing on strategies that pardon me, we hope will help you reduce stress, especially at a time if you're a high school student. This time you're going into exams. Just a couple of notes. First of all, I've been a high school career counselor, teacher for many years, guidance counselor, and over the course of that time I have had consultations and have assisted many stressed students. So I hope that we can pass along some tools for you today as well that you'll find helpful. Now based out of Saskatoon, I work independently helping students, primarily with university advisement and career planning. Another note that the material in this presentation is provided as general information only. It's not intended to provide any specific medical or health advice for an individual, and should not be relied upon in that regard. Just a couple of other brief notes before we proceed. Some of this webinar will speak more to high school students, some to university or college students, but there are some very good overall general perspectives to share with you today. And again, some of it focuses more on university, but we also are speaking to college students. So be aware of that diversity. An overview today, we're going to look at, in this webinar, a transition from high school to university and what to expect, good stress and bad stress, types of stress in your life and how to cope with them, looking forward to your academic future and how to reduce stress there, and then starting university and what your experiences might be like at university or college again. Looking at this saying, you're standing in the right direction, all you have to do is walk. This is an excellent philosophy for you to think about if you're a student moving from high school to college or university. And moving from high school to university, there are different factors that come into play. An early factor in a successful university or college career is making a smooth transition from high school to post-secondary. And a recent university study I've read states that students who are more resilient and find a more social comfort, as well as are confident, tend to make that transition more smoothly. Now, transitions might always be a challenge, but they're also exciting. So think about the first day of kindergarten or grade 9. Those were important steps. This is another. And getting used to a new environment takes time. And you have to think about some of the personal changes that you're going to encounter as you move into that new stage of your life. Some more food for thought, or another issue for thought, is the cost of university or college. And that there are many variables, and depends if you go away to college or university, or if you're staying in your home city. But overall, we're looking at tuition, $4,500, fees of $500, books, accommodations is a big one if you do have to move away from home, as well as transportation, your food, depending on if you're in residence, entertainment costs and utilities, all a value of around $17,000. And for some students, the cost of your education is a stressor in itself. And I'll take a moment here, although it's not within the slides of the webinar, to point out that it's, in terms of covering those costs, it's never too late to pursue scholarships and bursaries. I know the EDGE team and Karen, I believe February 1st, are hosting another webinar on how to find scholarships. And we're coming up into prime scholarship season here over the next few months, when there are more available through universities and colleges as entrance scholarships and external scholarships through companies, organizations, and other avenues. So be aware that those are out there and can be accessed, of course, through scholarshipscanada.com. There are something else to think about as you look at programs or co-op programs where a student will work part of the year and be employed part of the year, and that helps cover costs of university or college. Those are common, most common to business courses, trades, apprenticeships. Just went online yesterday and looked at Canada Student Loans site. Canada Student Loans and Grants offers both loans, which is money you need to repay, and of course we don't want to be burdened with debt over the long term, but they also offer grants, which are monies that don't need to be paid back. There are grants available for low and middle income families, so again it's worth pursuing those options as well as student loans. Transition from high school to university also involves adapting to your new environment and knowing what to expect. And sometimes there's that initial apprehension and fear if you're a high school student moving into, thinking about that year ahead, moving into university or college, that can be a bit intimidating. I know my last position as a career counselor in Winnipeg, I worked at a private girls' school and specifically made a point of having universities and colleges come in to present to students and let them know what the programs and environment will be like. And some of them just admitted they weren't quite ready for it. And that apprehension is common, and it's okay. But knowledge is power, and the more that you can find out ahead of time about what the experience will be like, the more prepared a student will be moving forward. Academics will be a transition. The workload will be heavier, reading time will be heavier, and personal growth will come out of that. You'll meet different people and have different experiences, and often those become lifelong friendships. There are many differences also between high school and university, such as professors don't take attendance, you're working for yourself, you're not working for someone else, the workload schedule is different and takes some getting used to. And if you're on the top of your class in high school or secondary school, that might not be the case moving forward. There are many successful students, but it's still important to work hard and put in that effort. Looking at this pie chart, it's a good overview of how your time commitment might change as you transition from high school to university. Especially looking at the sleep, there definitely is less sleeping hours in the university setting, and also significant changes in the studying and homework sections, with studying and being double and homework more than double. And that's your independent work time that really is critical to manage. Still time for fun. Look at the fun section, 46 hours versus 40 hours. That's very important still to keep that balance in your life. And also be aware that there's good stress and bad stress. The good stress can be beneficial to help us get things done, and keep us moving, especially at those times when we need an extra little kick. And bad stress is is prolonged. It hangs over us too long, can be situational like during exam time, but usually passes, and it's important to learn how to cope with that stress. Symptoms and sources of stress in daily life as a student might be due to academic setting, living conditions, expectations of those around you, and influence of friends and relationships. And if stress goes too far, it can be a heavy burden if you're a student. Anxiety might be another result. Feeling nervous and not always being able to cope with new situations. And again, there are ways to help address those issues if they are longer lasting or interfering with your academic and social life. And you'll face some challenges possibly that might cause you to feel down at times, and that's normal. There are ups and downs, but feeling the occasional blue period and being depressed are two very different things. Stress takes on various symptoms, maybe feeling hopeless, loss of interest in activities, affects your sleeping, eating, feeling tired even though you might be sleeping, getting sufficient sleep, your self-esteem drops, and again, if those occur over a longer period of time, then it's important to talk to someone. And who can you talk to? Well, university counselors, student centers, college and university counseling centers are all excellent sources or resources for you. And university doctors, family therapists, mental health counselors, maybe a religious leader guide, a psychiatrist, psychologist, and a social worker if need be, that we want to fit in a web poll question. Correct?
Okay, so what we're curious to find out is what are some of the stressors you think you'll experience or have experienced in your first year of a university or college. So we have options such as new environment, you're adjusting to a new environment, living away from home, heavier workload, you're making friends, or you're trying to maintain old friendships because you've moved away, or different situations, and also your academic expectations. All right, so let's see. We do have a question here. What are some activities that I can do so I'm not stressed or depressed?
Exercise is critical. It is a good vent. Any type of activity, it doesn't have to be exercise. Exercise is one means. But the positive aspect about exercise, especially is that the endorphins that are produced in your body, which are a good thing, as a result of exercise, help to overcome the negative feelings you have, and also gives you a mental break from those stressors that you're experiencing. Any activity is going to help you feel relaxed and take your mind off of what's concerning you, whether it's reading, yoga, and we're going to address some more of those strategies further in the webinar.
Yeah, and definitely I agree to that. Exercise does help. A lot of people do yoga and meditation, just breathing exercises in order to relax. That is helpful for some people. In yesterday's presentation, and as I was speaking with Sandie prior to the presentation yesterday, we were speaking about some of the things that we do to de-stress. And for myself, I'm a recent graduate. I just graduated last year in June, so definitely I remember far too well the student stress and the student lifestyle. So when I get stressed out, I notice that I tend to procrastinate a lot, and I think that's a common symptom with a lot of people, not just students, but people in general. When you really want to avoid an activity or you just have so much to do, it's overwhelming. Sometimes the automatic reaction is to simply procrastinate, to avoid any activity. And although that's normal, you want to try to find some ways to cut around that. And what I do is sometimes I might not notice that I'm procrastinating, but when I do, and I'm thinking, oh, wait, I have an essay due tomorrow. Why am I still surfing the web? Then what I do is give myself some time to have my break, get it out of my system, and then it sort of allows you to refresh and then get back to work. And that's one way to help with de-stressing. I tend to surf the web or read a book or watch a movie or something, and that's often a great way, and also talking with friends. But we will be covering more further on in our presentation. Okay.
And Karen, if I might add, pardon me, when I mentioned reading earlier, I mean reading for pleasure, not reading because you have to. Reading a novel that's going to take your mind away from it, and like you mentioned, watching a movie, something that will take your mind away from those stressors.
Exactly. It's also a great way if you happen to be living away from home in university and for whatever reason you just need a quick pick-me-up. Sometimes watching your favorite movie is enough to sort of give you a more uplifting experience, remind you of things that are more cheerful. So that's definitely something I did when I studied abroad for 5 months in Germany. I missed home a lot, so I had this one movie that would replay whenever I was feeling down, and it reminded me of home, so that was kind of nice. Okay, so we have another question here on how do I make the transition to university smoother?
When we go on to the webinar, further on in the webinar, pardon me, I will refer to preparation for university. And hopefully more and more high schools are being proactive in helping students learn about programs, and counselors are very helpful that way. So always utilize the strengths of a guidance counselor to talk through and walk through more information about the colleges or universities you're interested in. And anytime there's an opportunity to go to a career fair, a university campus day, and get some exposure to what the university or college life will be like, go for it. That's really going to help you be more informed. And speak to students you know, or if you have friends, their older brothers or sisters that go to university or college, and talk to them about their experience. And it just helps you get a reality about what it will be like.
Exactly. And also, like, speak to people that you trust. You can even speak to your professor. I remember I was having some difficulties adjusting to the workload in my second year, simply also because I took on a lot of extra work. So I had 2 part-time jobs and 2 volunteer opportunities plus taking school full-time, which is a lot of work and probably not something you would want all on your plate, especially in the first year or 2 of university when you're still, or college when you're still adjusting. But what I did was I had one professor that I thought was really cool, and I spoke with him. I went to his office hours. I spoke with him about, like, you know, feeling stressed out, about the workload, and he actually gave me tips on how to manage my time. So that's actually really interesting. Like, you may not think that a professor or teacher necessarily cares, but that's not always the case. If you find somebody that you trust or you believe will listen to you, then they can offer you advice. As Sandie pointed out earlier with the webinar slide on people that you can approach for help, counselors are your main resource if you are in high school, or your parents perhaps. But if you're in university or college, maybe you would like to speak with your friends, but also some of your professors if you don't want to approach a counselor at the university. Okay, so what I'm going to do is close off our poll. It looks like about 80% of you are worried or find that there may be some stress in the workload department. And also with academic expectations. That's really interesting because in yesterday's session we had a higher number of people choosing that adjusting to a new environment or living away from home may be a cause of concern.
The difference between yesterday and today, it's always important to remember, though, that there are people, resources there for you to approach, and that are there for students in case you need to ask questions and get some help. And before you go on to a college or university, explore those for the particular university or college that you are attending, and find out where those resources are and what's available to you. There are a number of them that really are very helpful for students of all stages and years. Now, this is a key issue, time management. And that is one key method or strategy on coping with stress. Some of us are better time managers than others, but it's important to find a system that works for you. And because your time at university or college is going to be less structured than it was in high school, it's very important for you to manage your time appropriately to be successful. So writing things down is helpful, or making a record, keeping a schedule, and accounting for the activities and assignments that need to be completed. Organize yourself and make notes to yourself. Keep track of what is your priority, and plan ahead. Consult your list of things to do. Work with a schedule. Be sure to take into consideration how long you'll need to complete a particular task. For example, an essay. How long will it take you to do the research, do the outline, actually write it, and proofread, edit? Do you need 2 weeks? Fit that into your day, into a planner, and use that planner to keep track of all your activities, assignments, labs, whatever that will be part of your life as a student. And keep on top of what professors expect. That initial outline or syllabus you get at the start of the course is very important to you to follow. Pay attention to the deadlines for essays, when the exams are scheduled, or tests, and fit that into your planner as well. In regards to further time management, work with a realistic schedule, and think about the best time for you to get work done. For some people it might be the morning, some people evening. Pay attention to your sleep and eating patterns. Those are critical as a student as well, making sure that you are taking good care of yourself. As earlier mentioned, trying to exercise, to get a break, some recreation, setting priorities, and keeping track of what might need to be done most immediately. Make a list for the next day, but keep it realistic. Keep that checklist realistic so it's doable. Don't overwhelm yourself. And build flexibility in your schedule. Don't make it too rigid. There's going to be interferences that come up. Keep it real. More info on scheduling. Here, finding a study environment that works for you. I know in my university graduate years, I found the map room in the University of Saskatchewan, second floor, and that was my favorite place to go work. It felt comfortable. I got to know people that consistently studied there. We had a coffee group, and that became also part of a social network. So you need to find a place, maybe on campus, at home, both, or in your residence, that is going to be comfortable for you. Develop a study routine. Break large assignments into smaller segments, and they're more doable that way. Break it down. Take breaks when you're working. Every half hour or so, it's important to digest what you've just been reading or studying. Allow time for reviewing your work. If you've been studying for an hour, take a break and then just review what you highlighted. Pick the key points. And back to that word procrastination. Really be careful there. Keep on top of your schoolwork. And that's a dangerous one, especially early in the academic school year, September, when university and colleges traditionally start their school year. There are so many social activities going on. It's easy to be drawn into the social life. Keep a balance. It's important to have fun, but stay on top of the deadlines. One other aspect about scheduling I'll just comment. I spoke to a friend in Winnipeg today whose daughter just started her first year at the University of Winnipeg, or it started last September, and she was able to actually schedule her classes and was fortunate this way. She had left a day free every Thursday. That's not always doable with course scheduling, but that is her day to just go hard and get things done. And it breaks up her week, and it's worked really well for her. But that's not always an option, especially if you have to schedule labs, if you're taking a science load, for example, science course load. More tips on coping with stress. Take a few moments to remove yourself from whatever's causing you stress. Back to taking a break, taking a walk, going to a movie, and then relax. Try to relax your mind. Yoga, meditation are useful. Just listening to your favorite song. Any of those little breaks. And get in touch with people that you trust and you want to talk. Just talking it out is helpful by texting or phoning or going for a coffee. And complete one task at a time. Just break it down. I remember when I was a career counselor in Winnipeg having many students come into my office, and especially this time of year, just feeling they had so much going on in their lives, and I would sit down with them, and I'd actually get them to write down what their main, 3, 4, 5 main concerns, and how we can attend, how that student could attend each one to reduce the stress, how to make it more manageable. And once they could visualize that it was doable to tackle each thing at a time, each task at a time, it gave them some sense of relief. Be positive, use positive self-talk, and you can do this. You're going to get through this hump if there's a hump, and you'll move on to the next task that needs to be done. And schedule time for activities you enjoy. Back to balance. Keep a balance in your life. And we'll stop and pause there again for one other web poll.
We're interested to know, what are some methods you use to ease or cope with the stress in your life? So we have yoga, meditation, exercise, regular sleep schedule, planning ahead, scheduling your activities, talking to friends you trust. I just want to refer back to what Sandie was speaking about earlier in terms of planning ahead and planning your schedule. It's really interesting that Sandie, that you brought up. Some students might schedule like a day or two, if possible, into their university or college schedule, just simply to work on something or just for a breather in the week. And definitely, I do know a lot of people in my program who did the same thing. When they were able to, they would book a day off. Some of them used that day to work because, as in like to make money, because they needed to pay for courses and such. But on the flip side, there were a lot who also took that time off instead of for doing any work at all. It was just to de-stress and not do anything for that day, or to use that time to do their homework or get a head start on the homework, because sometimes it's not realistic necessarily to lump in everything into the weekend, because that's a lot of work to catch up on, and definitely breaking things up does help. As well, if you are using your iPhone or Android, there is an application called Evernote, which is really helpful if you're note-taking and you need, and you're a visual learner. So what you can do is take pictures of some of the notes or jot down notes that you have for class, put them into your phone, and then sort of look at them on the go. So instead of lugging your textbook with you or your notebook, you can have everything all on one interface and sort of look through that if you happen to commute to and from school. Because I remember as a student, I would sleep a lot on the public transportation because I was tired out. But sometimes, you know, when I wasn't tired, I would take that time to review notes, and that was a great way for just a quick refresher to go through that, because I know often as a student, some of the concern is how do I make more time in my schedule to review my notes if I feel stressed and taxed for time throughout the process. Okay, so what I'm going to do is close off the poll and share the results. Thank you for everyone who participated. It looks like we have, the results are fairly close between regular sleep schedule and planning ahead. So that's very, very good. And there's a tie between talking to friends or people you trust. So that's really good. And also, speaking about talking to friends you trust, when Sandie mentioned earlier about her study group, and again with setting aside time for yourself, what I did with my friends to keep in contact with my friends from high school, every Friday we would get together at a local coffee shop and just go over things that we did for the week. And that was a great time to vent out stress or just to update each other on our lives. We don't do that as often right now because we're all working in different parts of the city, working full-time, so scheduling that in has become a bit difficult. But as a student, that was a great time to connect with some of my friends who are still living around and studying in my city, but not necessarily at the same school. And that was a great opportunity just to unwind and get connected with everybody. All right, so I'm going to bring the presentation back to Sandie.
Thank you, Karen. Talking about those connections, when you go to college or university, you make connections with people that are long-term. And even now, after X number of years after completing university, we have university friends that all over the country, but we still keep in touch, try to get together when it works, and whether it's a weekend in the summer or when everybody returns to their home base. And that's one of the great things about the transition to that next phase of education to post-secondary is building those friendships. And it's really, really a special time of your life. And when you get to university, there are other methods to help you achieve success and make the transition. Again, we talked about university preparation earlier, finding out as much as you can ahead of time. And once you get there, you need help with study skills, exam prep, writing essays, that time management issue. Those types of workshops and brief courses are offered to help you if you need them. Get familiar with academic policies and what's expected. And most of the actual all the handbooks for each university and program guides will outline some of those policies. Go on the websites, research, check them out. If you need information about AP or advanced placement or IB courses, there can be help there too. And feel free to have, the earlier the better, but even once you get to university, to use the career counseling services and take career and aptitude tests to help you even focus further on what your real interests are. And once you get to university, attendance is critical, study skills, hard work, being positive, trying to stay as healthy as you can with your schedule, and leading a balanced lifestyle. And in coping, it's always important to try to find a program, a study in an area of interest that you enjoy. Really thinking about your interests and skills. Go to university with an open mind. Watch your expectations, enjoy the independence, the freedoms, and visualize success. And just enjoy the experience. And be aware that there might be some changes and blips along the way. I remember when I started my first year of university, I wanted to take a French class, but I had to take a higher level French course because I graduated with high school core French. And when I got into this French class, the first 2 weeks I was totally overwhelmed. I knew it wasn't going to work for me in my first term of university because I was focusing so much on this one course. It was taking most of my study time, and I ended up changing to another course and dropping the French at that point in my first year because I knew it wasn't realistic at the time. So be prepared that there might be some changes and adjustments to be made along the way. In terms of planning your future and academic success, or to achieve success, keep in mind again your personal interests, what you're best at, academic interests, favorite subjects moving forward, how will those fit into a program for you at college or university. Your career academic goals, where do you see yourself after you're done a degree or diploma, and then further down the road, 5, 10, 20 years. Chances are your career and interests might change over that time. Consider your work values, what's important to you when you are in a workplace, in the kind of job or career you're pursuing. And your skills, what are you good at? What's your passion? Those are all important to think about. And then from the EDGE team and School Finder group, we have the option to do a 3-step career quiz to help you learn further about yourself and explore some of those values, skills, interests, and your personality. And it's about knowing who you are. Looking at future reflections and planning ahead, back to that question, where do you see yourself years from now? You might think, why am I, if I knew all the answers, why am I here right now at this webinar? But these are steps in the process of learning who you are and what programs and education might be best for you. There might be uncertainties, and it's important to realize that once you make a commitment to one path, nothing's final. Students often get into programs at university or college and change programs, change courses, and find out about other options they weren't aware of before. Just learning more about what's out there is really important. Starting university, your life there will be affected by many factors, and your transition, how you settle in, maybe by your own personality, your attitude, your previous experiences, your situation, if you've had to move away from home, from your family or not, and really, moving away from some relationships. Keep in mind you're going to build other ones. The course, the program doesn't meet your expectations, and again, be prepared to make revisions or changes there if the initial one isn't working for you. Then there's the issues of financial issues we talked about briefly earlier. These are all factors that come into play, and the more you think about them ahead of time and plan for them, the smoother your transition to university or college should be. Now, starting university is also an interesting time for parents, and I know more and more universities and colleges are offering information for parents as to what to expect and how to help their son or daughter at that time. Same, I know at the University of Saskatchewan, here in Saskatoon. The same days where high school students can go for campus days and learn about programs and get campus tours, parents are offered the same opportunity in a separate group, of course. And that's very, very helpful. So for parents, it's a huge step to see their son or daughter move on as well. So be aware from a parent's perspective that expectations are high. Find out as well what services are available to students. It's a time of change, a new relationship between parents and a son or daughter. Also be aware as the student should be of important dates, deadlines, payment deadlines, and just being informed and supportive. And looking at further issues, money matters, supporting your students' choices, being upfront and honest about going back to the money matters, how that's all going to work in your particular family. Understand that students, if they're living at home, their schedules will be different. It's not going to be like the days of high school. Then students in residence will have a different experience as well. They may need parents more, they may need parents less, may phone home, may text periodically, and some don't. It's just it's such a personal experience. I know one student from Winnipeg who went to Western, and her first month away from home, she found it really challenging. She phoned home frequently. She was really finding it a difficult transition, and after the first month just settled in, got more comfortable, and then ended up loving the experience. It turned out to be nothing but positive, and she's now in her third year there. So it's just a matter of giving the situation time and getting adjusted. There might be some university culture shock, might not be, if you're aware of what's to come, and again, those students are more resilient, might find it an easier transition. Just be prepared. Now recently, looking at this next slide, I surveyed a few students, first-year university students here in Saskatoon, and asked them a few questions about their university experience, what they expected it would be like before going to university, what the reality is, what the challenges were. So just a couple of highlights here. One student number one, thought that exams would be ridiculously hard and the workload would be overwhelming. And in the end, he ended up becoming very good at time management, and he found that that wasn't really the case. Student number two that I interviewed, he found that one of his greatest challenges was just to try to stay involved. He was very active in high school, with student council, sports, but found that once he got to university, he had to make a choice about how much time to study, trying to keep a part-time job, and still trying to fit in some recreation. And really, for him, it was a bit of a challenge to figure out that balance. But he has now achieved that, and it's working for him this year. Looking at the next slide, the responses here deal more with time management and how they were able to work through a schedule. One student, student number one, states he made a personal schedule, and then he just really figured out it's important to take breaks, just drop everything, take a breath, and get away from studying for a little while. The other student worked out a system, a ratio, 45-minute study time, then a 15 to 25-minute relaxed time, and that helped him to, figure out a pattern and get into some good habits that are helping him be successful at university. Keep in mind as you move on to university or college that the additional resources, as Karen mentioned earlier, professors, teaching assistants, feel free to have those discussions if there's a course or an issue with a class that you need some help with. Approach them. I'm sure in most cases they're glad to be helpful. There are help centers, program advisors. You're still sorting out what direction you want to take. Back to the counseling services, facilities and offices for disability, students with disabilities. And in a residence, there are supervisors who might be helpful. And always go back to your friends, family, peers, and people are there to help, and it's okay to ask for help, most definitely. Looking back on all of these strategies and tools, it's a matter of finding time management that works for you, asking for help when you need to, and knowing that there are people out there to support you. And whether you're a high school student, or if you are, good luck with exams. Most of them would be this month. And also to university students who are looking forward to the next 3 last months of their program. And I will turn it back over to Karen.
All right, thank you, Sandie. Okay, we had a question about the application that I mentioned earlier. This is the Evernote application on the iTunes website. So feel free to download this application. It helps you organize all your notes that you take and with pictures and flashcards. But if you're more of a flashcard person, another great app, I haven't used this myself, but it was recommended to me actually by one of our Twitter community people, and she uses Steady Flash. So feel free to download this application. It's essentially the same idea, but you're just making flashcards for yourself. And again, this is a great way to study while you're on the go. Just a reminder quickly, we will go to a few questions that we do have, but just a reminder quickly that we will be hosting a webinar session, our popular Finding Scholarships presentation, on February 1st. And very exciting, just released today, officially, we will be having a Scholarships Canada Twitter party. So feel free to find out more information on that. You can RSVP on our Facebook page. You'll be able to meet all of us at the Scholarships Canada office. It'll be a great opportunity to meet other scholarship winners or people searching for scholarships. As well, we'll be having games, prizes, and food, so lots of fun. And also a graduate school application strategies webinar is coming to you later in February. Just in case you have any questions, feel free to contact us at info@edgeip or at my personal email address. If you are a parent or a counselor, we do offer postcards. So send us an email with your mailing address and how many postcards you would like, and I'd be happy to send those along to you. Now, in terms of questions, let's see what we have in store for this evening. How easy is it to make friends even if you don't live in a dormitory in your first year of university? Will you feel lonely in the first few days? I'm not sure about Sandie, but definitely for myself, I was a commuter. I didn't live on campus because I went to school fairly close to where I live, so living on campus wasn't really an option for me. What I found really helped in terms of the friendship department was joining clubs. So I went to 2 different universities, and I went to York University the first time around when I did my first degree in psychology. And I joined the school newspaper there, and I met some friends there. Joining student clubs is also not only a great way to meet people, but to network as well, because definitely the chief editor at the newspaper, at the school paper, actually acted as one of my references for one of my first jobs. So if you're looking for opportunities to meet new people and perhaps to gather a reference, joining a club is a great opportunity to do that. And when I went to my second university, I did have a study group, so that was another way for me to meet people in first year. All you really need is a common interest, and that pretty much helps move things along. Sandie, I'm not sure if you have any other comments to add to that.
No, it's just important to get yourself out there. And quite often there are activities for first-year students early in the academic year, social activities. So make a point of attending some of those, and really it doesn't take too long to connect with other people.
A question here about, do you have any quick like general tips on effective study habits?
Well, that overlaps with time management. And I'm just thinking back to my time as a teacher, some of the tips I would share with students. And I think it was a matter of just, again, finding a space that works for you, where you're comfortable, where you won't be interrupted. Just setting up aside short periods, a half an hour, taking a break, and just trying to be consistent. It's a habit that needs to be formed, and the earlier one learns that, if you have some strong high school study skills, those will definitely help you moving on to university or college and carry you forward.
Yeah, I agree. And also, other than managing your time into blocks of time that you're able to manage, usually when I find that when I'm studying, and as Sandie mentioned earlier, it's good to keep your study sessions for yourself pretty short, because you tend, well, at least I found, I tended to drift off or kind of not pay attention to my notes after a while. So if you break up your study sessions either into 1 hour or maybe half-hour blocks, then that helps keep things in check. And also, maybe at the end of that half hour or the end of that hour, when you're studying a chapter, for example, you can leave the last 5 minutes or so just for a quick review. And if you are using that cell phone app that I mentioned earlier, Evernote or SteadyFlash, that's a great way for you to either add notes into your phone, or to use that time to look at those flashcards, or to look at those notes that you've made at the end of your study break, and sort of review what you've learned, to make sure that you know where you're heading and perhaps where you may need to spend more time. Because definitely there are some cases where for certain courses it's you might learn better reading from your notes, you might learn better reading from the textbook, or in some cases I have known some students who simply just show up for class because they're more of a visual learner, they're more of a visual learner. So what they do is they look over the PowerPoint presentation and sort of imagine the professor, remember some anecdotal information from that, and that helps them to remembering key points in that particular lecture or the material.
I was just going to add, quality is important rather than quantity. Focusing on the key points, recording those key points and making notes on those key points, because then those will activate other information that you need to draw from, rather than trying to read over pages and pages of notes and memorize them, for example. Really focus in on key details and make those your key points for study notes.
Yeah, for sure. We have a question here about forming study groups. So how would one form a study group? Would you form it yourself, or would a professor do that for you? Based on my experience, there are some cases where depending on the university or college that you go to, there may be some student organizations that actually run study sessions. So at some universities, they do have a students offering support service for some programs where it's a volunteer organization. There are students who, senior students, so students in their third or fourth year, or graduate students who volunteer their time and offer exam preparation sessions. There are a few universities across Canada that offer that service. It's entirely a volunteer organization. But you can always form your own study group, or sometimes at the beginning of a lecture, depending on the professor, they may announce that you may wish to form a study group. If you are on a listserv, which in some cases, some courses have a listserv, what a listserv is basically you're on an email list for the course that you enrolled in, and that's a way for professors to send out information about the course to you, so whether there's an update on the schedule or something like that. Generally speaking, students have access to that information. You may not be able to see individual email addresses, but you can definitely send out an email to everybody in your course, and you can simply run the study session if you wish, if you choose to take on that responsibility, and just say, hey, I'm thinking of running a study session, maybe every day at I don't know, every Thursday night would be great. Anyone interested, please email me, something like that. Or you can even just host a session after maybe a tutorial class that you may have. Anything that that you feel comfortable doing, by all means go ahead, or offer a suggestion that somebody should put together a study group if you don't feel that you would like to take on that responsibility. Sandie, do you have any comments about that?
Well, this discussion just made I think of something here at the University of Saskatchewan, and I know they're offered at other campuses, are transition groups, where first-year students can, they're put into 2 or 3 first-year courses together with other people that are of similar interests. And this is primarily through arts and science. So you might have a first-year English course, let's say psych course, and one other with a common group of people. So you automatically have a network of, let's say, a dozen people in this transition group that you share you're in the same classes with. And in this instance, that becomes like a study group that's offered for students, so they're not feeling like a lone single student on a big campus.
Okay, we have a question here on how do you cope from living away from home and being away from everyone you know? Sort of briefly touched on this a little earlier, but that's all right. In terms of coping with living away from home, went to school close to home, so I didn't live away from home, but I did go on an exchange program in my 3rd year, which was course related, and that was for 5 months. And that was my first time away from home in a foreign country. So I definitely do understand the concern there for students who are living abroad while they're in school. It is an extra level of stress because you're adjusting to a new environment. How to cope, what I mentioned earlier was I had a favorite movie that I would watch, and that reminded me of home. So whenever I felt a little homesick, I would watch the movie. Moulin Rouge. It's a little corny. It's a little sad. It makes me cry every single time. But it reminds me of home because that was a movie that one of my close friends bought for me on my birthday, not too far from when I actually started. Well, actually, no, I think I was in university at that point. But it was a very meaningful gift at the time. And that, just watching that reminds me of home. And whenever I watch it, I think of my friend. So whenever she's online, I'd start chatting with her, or I might give her a call. And so, like, just having something familiar is a great way to combat the loneliness, or in some cases, if you're in a foreign country while you're studying, that can help with adjusting to culture shock. That was how I dealt with being away from home and living away from home. Also, not sure of any other things. I need to think about that a little bit. Sandie, do you have any other suggestions?
Well, and just get involved and connect with new people. Explore your new surroundings. Take a break on the weekend and go see an interesting site or place in your new environment so you learn to appreciate it and learn about what's new and exciting. But definitely get involved. And then you can always stay thinking for technology. Stay connected to the people you need to at home, and they're always there, and you find the days and weeks go by very quickly because you get busy and absorbed in what you're doing, and it is manageable, very manageable.
Yeah, exactly. And you, Sandie, you bring up a good point. Staying in touch. It's so easy now to stay in touch because even if you can't afford to call long distance, you can definitely go on Skype. As long as your parents or your friends have Skype, then any calls that you have on that or any texting or what have you is free. So that's a great service to use. Definitely something I was using while I was abroad. And if your parents don't know how to use Skype, you can totally teach them. It'd be a great learning experience. And yes, getting yourself out there is really important. And if you are living away from home and you're on campus, there's that whole sense of freedom and the whole opportunity to explore your city. It's a great opportunity that you might not think because definitely because I lived close to home and I went to school close to home, I didn't really think about exploring downtown Toronto. It wasn't really on the top of my mind. Definitely there's lots to explore in Toronto, but being a resident here doesn't really seem like something I would want to check off my list. But if you are living away from home, explore your city. The more you're familiar with it, the more comfortable you'll become in your environment. And if you don't want to do anything alone, definitely invite people, either in your class. If you're in a study group, invite your study group out for an outing. Just because you're a study group doesn't necessarily mean you have to do everything within the confines of a classroom setting or because you're in that class. You can do social activities. That's totally a great opportunity to do that and to network and connect. And so again, thank you everybody for attending. It was a great session. I hope you enjoyed it. Good night from Toronto, and thank you again, Sandie.
Good night. Thank you.